Okay, here we go. It's not ESPN's 30 for 30, but it is my New York Giants 98 for 98. 98 seasons in the history of the New York Giants in 98 days. Now, I'm probably not going to get it done in 98 days, but I'm trying to get it done by the beginning of the season, which starts, early, middle-ish September. So I think I should get it done by then. But we're forging ahead. We're getting into the 1940s. We're up to the 1942 NFL season, and more importantly, the 1942 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 18th season in history of the New York Football Giants. Now, it's the 18th season for the Giants. It's the 23rd season in the history of the NFL. NFL started in 1920. Giants started in 1925. So the 18th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. Now, back then, I mean, the Giants kind of like did a little up and down, up. There was whatever, like stock market up and down, up and down. Like 32 wasn't that good, but then 33, 34, 35, the Giants went to the championship games. Right, 36, 37, they came down a little bit. The Redskins went to the championship game. The 38 and 39, the Giants had good seasons. They went to the championship game. 1940, the Giants kind of came back down to earth a little bit. The Redskins went to the championship. 1941, the Giants had a good season. Defense good, offense good. They went to the championship game. For 1942, the Giants came back down again. Redskins went to the championship game. So this is one of those. I mean, they didn't plummet. They wound up with the 500 records, which is, but all in all, not an unbelievably horrible season. But, from 19, it was just the Giants and the Redskins went to the championship games in the Eastern Division. And basically, from 1933 to 1946, there was only 5 teams that went to championship games. The Detroit Lions went to one championship game. 1935, they beat the Giants 26-7 in Detroit. But other than that, there's only 4 teams that went to championship games from 33 to 46. The Bears, the Packers, the Redskins, and the Giants. That was it. This Bears team in the early 40s, from 40 to 46, unbelievable. One of like the greatest, I want to say era, but I mean the greatest, the few years in the history of any football team. Period. Now, this is the second time that in this season, 1942, the Bears went to the championship game. So this is the second time the Bears went to the championship game undefeated, right? And unfortunately for them, this is the second time that the 2007 Patriots popped up because they went there undefeated, the Bears, and they lost in the championship game. So it was a good championship game, but some people consider the 1940, I mean, you got to be a historian and this, that, and the other thing and all. But some people consider the 1942 Bears team the most dominating team in the history of professional football. Now, had they won the championship and wound up, they were 11-0. They only played 11 games. They went to the championship game. There wasn't like 2 or 3 playoff games in the Super Bowl. Them was only 11 games, but they dominated. I'm going to go over their records and scoring and all that. And, wow, I mean, it put the Patriots to shame. The 2007, I mean, the Miami Dolphins put them to shame. They were just crushing people. It was kind of funny in a way because the Bears and the Giants both had very good teams, and it's very, very odd. 1946, the Bears and the Giants went to the championship game together. All right. After that, the Bears and the Giants just kind of went away. The next time the Bears and the Giants went to the championship game was in 1956 when they faced off against one another. Then the Bears just kind of went away. And the Giants from 56 to 63 were in 6 championship games. But the next time the Bears went to the championship game was in 1963, so against the Giants. But so this era for the Bears was just phenomenal. It's probably second to none. I mean, I'd really have to say, just the way they just dominated teams, second to none. But after 46, they just kind of went away. That's when then the Lions started coming to power in their division. The Rams started coming to power. Even the Cardinals won a they went to 2 championship games. They won 1 championship. So, but this year for the Bears, the early mid 40s was just second to none. The NFL draft. Let's see, what do we got here? Now, this is all right. NFL draft was held on December 22nd, 1941 at the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago. It was the first time it was held in Chicago. It was held in Philadelphia. It was, it was held in Chicago before. It was held in Chicago before. It was held in Philadelphia. It was held in New York twice. It was held in Wisconsin. It was held in Washington. Now it's back in Chicago once again. Let's see. 2 members of this draft class. Once again, it was not a banner year. They picked 200 players. Only 2 of them wound up going to the Hall of Fame. I believe the year before, if I remember, I think in 1941, I think there was only 1 player selected out of the 200 players that were selected in the draft went to the Hall of Fame. 1940, I think there was only another 2 players that were selected went to the Hall of Fame. So in the past 3 drafts, there's only like 5. I think, if I remember correctly, only like 5 Hall of Famers. So. Let's see here. The first overall selection by the Pittsburgh Steelers was Mac Speedy. Oh, I'm sorry. The first overall selection was Pittsburgh Steelers Bill Dudley. He went to the Hall of Fame. Okay, and Max Speedy, the 135th overall selection by the Detroit Lions. He went to the Hall of Fame as well. So you had Bill Dudley and Max Speedy. But the first overall selection went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was Bill Dudley. Let's see here. The how it worked out was the way it worked out in the past several years, just I guess to get parity. The first round, all 10 teams selected. That was 5 teams in the Western Division, 5 teams in the Eastern Division. The Giants picked number 8. They had Merrill Hapes, a fullback from Ole Miss. But what they did to try to get parity, they took the teams with the 5 worst records. So in the second round and in the 4th round, the 5 teams with the worst record from the year before, they're the only teams that picked. So in the second round, there was only 5 picks, the 5 worst teams from the year before. The 3rd round, all 10 teams picked. The 4th round, there was the 5 worst teams from the year before, and then they continued on in the 5th round, all 10 teams. So the odd thing is say like Pittsburgh Steelers, they had a selection in the 1st round, the 2nd round, the 3rd round, the 4th round, and the 5th round. And the thing is, I said this in my couple other videos, is that but when pick 31 rolled around, the Pittsburgh Steelers took their 5th player. The Giants had only taken 2 players up to that point in time. The Giants had to wait till pick number 38 just to get their 3rd player. So, imagine drafting, being like that today. Could you imagine that? Teams getting like 5 picks before the other team gets their 3rd pick, but that's the way it was to try to, get some parity in the NFL. So the Giants, let's see, in the 3rd round, their 2nd overall pick, which was in the 3rd round, they took Bill Swigger, a back from Minnesota. Their 3rd overall pick in the 5th round was Al Blozis, a tackle from Georgetown. Now, what's so important about him, he's one of the ones he passed away in World War II. He has his number retired by the New York. He was a phenomenal tackle. He was a defensive tackle and offensive tackle. He was 6'6". Some people said he could have possibly been the best tackle. Some said ever. He was 6'6", 250 pounds. His rookie season, he was like a Pro Bowler. His second season, he was an All-Pro Bowler. So he was like the best tackle in all football in his second season. His third season, he played. I saw anywhere from 2 to 3 games on furlough from the military. So he came. So that would have been in 1944, I believe it was. Would have been his third and final season. So his third and final season in 1944, he played 2 or 3 games on furlough from the military, and that was it. He only played 23 games in his entire career before he wound up passing away in World War II. As I said, he was a phenomenal athlete. He was able to throw a hand grenade almost 100 yards. I mean, just unbelievable athlete. And as I said, it's absolutely. I mean, obviously, period. That he had to, he gave his life for his country. So he passed away doing what doing an honorable thing, giving his life for his country. But I mean, he could have been an amazing. I'm sure he probably would have been a Hall of Famer if he didn't wind up passing away in World War II. But anyway, so that's the Giants' third pick. But as I said, Al Bloses. He's in the Ring of Honor. And number 32 is retired by the New York Giants. That's why you do not see any Giant player wearing number 32. That's because Al Bloses. Round 6, I'll just go up to round 10. Round 6, which actually wound up being the Giants' fourth pick. Bob Glass, a back from Tulane. Round 7, they took Tommy Prothro, a back from Duke, right? How about that? Tom Kearns, a tackle from Miami, Florida. Round 9, it took Bob Merker, an end from Millikan, wherever that's at. Millikan College, do not know. Then they took Mike Kopsick, an end from Georgetown in round 10. Now, the interesting thing here was what they did to make sure that all 10 teams wind up with 20 picks. They had rounds 21 and 22. And in rounds 21 and 22, the 5 teams with the best winning percentage are the only teams that picked in rounds 21 and 22. So basically, I mean, it's like the garbage. Yes, I don't want to say the garbage of but I mean, the guys that probably ain't never going to sniff a football field. Those were the guys that were still left in the draft for the Giants to draft. So, I mean, so that's where they try to get some parity, right? So in rounds 2 and 4, the 5 worst teams were the only ones that selected in the draft. And then they waited to rounds 21 and 22 for the teams with the 5 best records from the year before for them to get their final last 2 picks. So that way, all 10 teams wound up with 20 picks. Pick number 200, which I guess is Mr. Irrelevant, went to the Chicago Bears. Stu Clarkson, a center from Texas A&I. There you go. I said we have the 1942 NFL season. The 1942 NFL season was the 23rd regular season, National Football League. NFL was 23. The Giants were 18. Before the season, many players left for the service of World War II, thus depleting the rosters of all of the teams. And we're going to find out how depleted they got, as I believe it was 1943. Oh, let me say, I can check that out right here. I think 1943, the Eagles and the Steelers had to be combined to become the Steagles, I think, for one season because the roster was so depleted. Let me see. Yep. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. Yep. Yeah. They were called the Steagles. The Steelers and the Eagles. I think it was just for, well, I can check this out. I think it was just for 1 year. 1944, because the rosters were just so depleted. Yeah. Yep. Oh, actually, it was weird. Because in 1944, the Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Steelers merged. So the Eagles went back to being themselves in 1940. What was it? 1944. What did I say? But the Cardinals and the Steelers merged in 1944. So just because of with the war and everything. All right, let's see here. The Bears finished the season at 11-0 and faced the 10-1, and the Redskins were very good that year as well, too. Faced the 10-1 Redskins in the championship game. Washington, which had been beaten by the Bears 73-0 in the 1940 NFL championship game, got a measure of revenge in spoiling the Bears' hope for a perfect season, winning 14-6. But not only would it have been a perfect season, it would have been a three-peat because the Bears won. They beat the Redskins 73-0 in the 1940 championship game. They beat the Giants 37-9 in the 41 championship. So between the 1941 championship game and the 1940 championship game, the Bears won 110-9. They outscored their two opponents, the Redskins and the Giants, by 101 points. Unbelievable. Let's see here. Major rule changes. The use of flags on flexible shafts to mark the intersections of goal lines and sidelines, right, became mandatory. They're the predecessor to the pylon. Okay, so you used to have flags now, and obviously now we have pylons on the corners there, right? But they used to have flags. Clarification to the offsides rule is added. The center or snapper is not offsides unless a portion of his body is ahead of the defensive team's line. A half cannot end on a double foul. Instead, the period will be extended by one untimed down. Detachable, this is odd. I saw this. Detachable kicking toes are prohibited. So I guess they had detachable kicking toes that they used to use. When an encroachment or false start causes the other team to be offsides, only the initial foul is penalized, which is fair. A forward pass that first touches an eligible receiver may be intercepted. Interesting. And then this one, I kind of this one. This is a definite rule change. It says if the offensive team commits pass interference in the opponent's end zone, it is an automatic touchback. It used to be where the defensive team had the option. Now, I don't know why you would want to have the option, but it was the option of a 15-yard foul and a loss of down. Now it's an automatic or a touchback. So they had the option. It could be a touchback or it was a 15-yard foul and a loss of down. So now it's an automatic touchback. Yeah. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, that's a tough rule. That's a brutal rule. Now I'll tell you what, we had some yards put up this year. Let me tell you, the first time ever that a quarterback threw for over 2,000 in 11 games. Threw for over 2,000 yards in the season. That is, I think the most before was like 1,300 or 1,400 yards. So he like blew this out of the water. Not only did he blow it out of the water, but Don Hutson did as well too. But they're on the same team. I'll explain here. So Cecil Isbell, the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, threw for 2,021 yards, which was by far the most ever. The receiving leader was Don Hutson of Green Bay. And he threw the ball to Don Hutson, who received 1,211 receiving yards, which by far was the most ever. Then you had Bill Dudley, the rushing leader from Pittsburgh, with 696 yards, which is a decent amount. Nothing crazy, but a decent amount. The Joseph F. Carr Trophy, or the most valuable player, went to Don Hutson, the wide receiver for Green Bay. 1,211 yards. Wow. And I'll bet you he must have had a ton of touchdowns too. But the Bears finished obviously 11-0. Their closest competitor was the Green Bay Packers. Now the Green Bay Packers put up a lot of points. Green Bay Packers scored 300 points in 11 games. That's a lot of points. The Bears scored 376 points. The difference was the Packers gave up 215 points in those 11 games. They gave up a lot of points. The Bears only gave up 84. So the Bears didn't even give up. They gave up like 7.5 points a game. They scored. I think I'm going to go over here in a second, but I think they averaged. What the heck was it? Like 34.5 points a game. So they averaged outscoring their opponents by 27 points a game. The Redskins, they were 10-1. Their closest competitor was the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were 7-4. The Giants finished 5-1. Once again, I mean, their offense was very mediocre. They scored 155 points. I'm going to go over their offense, their stats and everything. And they gave up 139 points. It was nothing special. Very, very run-of-the-mill about everything with the Giants for the 1942 season. So, but I mean, the Redskins were definitely the better team. But if we look here, I mean, the Bears were just, yeah, it was just obviously, as I said, some people, I think it was even in a book written that the Bears, this was the most dominating team of possibly of all time. Let's see. Wait. Is this them? Oh, there we go. The Bears. All right, here we go. I mean, the Bears won. The closest their game was, they beat the Lions 16-0, and there was a 14-point. Okay, the final game of the season, they beat the Chicago Cardinals on the road 21-7. That was the closest game. They winning by only 14 points. That was their their closest game. They won 44-28. They won 21-7. They won 41-14. They beat the Giants 26-7. They won 45-14, 16-0, 35-0, 38-7, 42-0, 47-0, 21-7. I mean, they were just killing teams. They said, what was it? They averaged 34.2 points per game. They gave up 7.6 points per game. I mean, just unbelievable. Absolutely amazing team. I mean, their defense was, the Bears defense got 33 interceptions. I mean, wow. Okay, now the Redskins. Now this one is one of those ones for the record book that'll never be beaten. It can never be beaten. It's like a 99-yard touchdown run, 99-yard pass reception for a touchdown. It can never be beaten. So the Redskins were a very, very good team. What did they get? What did they get? What did they had here? They averaged 20.6 points per game, which back then is a very nice, very, very good amount. They only gave up 9.3 points per game. So once again, they basically doubled the amount of points that they gave up. That a very, very solid team. Sammy Baugh, where is he at here? I mean, he completed almost 59% of his passes. 58.7. You complete 58.7% of your passes back in 1942. That is a phenomenal amount. He threw for 1,524 yards. He had 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Just a phenomenal season. Sammy Baugh was just simply amazing, absolutely amazing. But what made this interesting here, I'm going to go over the Giants' scores in just a minute. In this is just mind blowing. The Washington Redskins lost one game all year. It was the second game of the season. They were at home. They lost to the Giants, 14-7. They lost 14-7 to the New York Giants. The Giants, I'm just going to show you how the Giants, they scored in the first quarter on a 50-yard touchdown pass, and they won the game on a 66-yard interception return for a touchdown. In the third quarter, they picked the pass off. Neil Adams picked the pass off, ran it back 66 yards for a touchdown. Ward Cuff kicked the extra point to put the Giants up 14-7. There was no scoring in the fourth quarter, so the Giants won 14-7 in Washington. The Giants had a 50-yard touchdown pass. Notice I'm emphasizing 50-yard touchdown pass. The Giants drew one pass all game. They completed it for a 50-yard touchdown pass. The Giants had 51 total yards for the whole game. 50 of it was on a touchdown pass. That means the rest of the game, the Giants ran the ball 26 times for 1 yard. The Giants didn't turn the ball over, didn't have a fumble, didn't have an interception. The Giants somehow won 14-7 with 1 yard rushing, 1 completed pass, and they did not get a first down all game long. They did not get a first down all game long. They went 1 for 1. They threw 1 pass all game, a 50-yard touchdown. I guess it probably surprised the heck out of the Redskins. But they ran the rest of the game. They had 27 plays the whole game. The Redskins had 74. The Redskins had 233 yards of offense. They had 15 first downs. The Giants did not have a first down all game. They ran the ball 26 times for 1 yard. Somehow they walked out of the game with a victory. Just absolutely unbelievable. Simply amazing. So I think that's the only time in the Giants' history where they did not get a first down in the whole game. I mean, I'm sure they've had other games where they had 2 first downs or 3 or whatever, but they did not have, in the second game of the 1942 season, they did not have a first down all game, and they still won the game. Simply amazing. All right, so the Giants, I mean, they were just very, very, very mediocre. I mean, they were out of the playoff race halfway through the season. The first game of their season, all right, once again, it was the same thing with the Giants, okay? The first couple, anywhere from the first 2 to their first 4 games, were always on the road because they shared the polo grounds with the New York baseball Giants. And so they wanted to make sure, I'm assuming that they wanted to make sure the baseball season was over before the Giants started playing in the polo grounds, chewing up the field. And that makes all the sense in the world. So the Giants' first home game wasn't until October 11th, which probably would have been well over before the time, after the time the World Series was over. But the Giants' first game of the season was on the road against the Washington Redskins. They won 14-7 in the game that I just explained. The second game of the season, they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so 13-10. So the Giants, after 2 games, were 1-1. Then they played the Philadelphia Eagles at home. The first home game was against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they won 35-17. So now the Giants are 2-1. I'm sorry. The following game, they were 2-2. They lost to the Chicago Bears 26-7. Then they were on the road. They played at the Brooklyn Dodgers, and they lost that 17-7. Now the Giants are 2-3. So by the time the following week, at the Pittsburgh Steelers, once again, who had a very good team that year, very good team that year. The Pittsburgh Steelers on November 1st played the Giants at the Polo Grounds, and the Pittsburgh Steelers won 17-9. The Giants were 2-4 and pretty much out of the playoffs. On November 8th, the Giants finally got another win. They played on the road in Philadelphia, and they won 14-0. The following week, November 15th, the Giants played at home against the Redskins, and this time the Redskins got a little bit of revenge. The Redskins won 14-7. The Giants won 14-7 on the road. The Redskins came and beat the Giants in New York. So the Giants played the Washington Redskins 2 times, had a grand total in 2 games, had a grand total of 8 first downs. They played 2 games against the Washington Redskins, 1942. They had a grand total of 151 yards of offense and 8 first downs. Whew. The following week, November 22nd, they tied the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers came to town. They tied them 21-21. Then they finished, so they were 3-5-1. Season's totally over. They're just playing for pride right now. The final 2 games, actually, the final 4 games were all at home. The final game, the second to last game, was against the Chicago Cardinals. They won that one 21-7 to go 4-5-1. So now to save, just to get a 500 season, not have a losing season, they had to beat the Brooklyn Dodgers at home in the final game. Now, the Brooklyn Dodgers always gave the New York Giants a hard time. Always. But this time, the final game of the season at the Polo Grounds, the Giants would win 10-0 over the Brooklyn Dodgers to finish the season 5-5-1. I mean, nothing, I mean, the Giants only completed 67 passes. Their opponents completed 114 passes. Although their opponents only completed 114 passes, the Giants defense only gave up 4 passing touchdowns. The Giants had 10 passing touchdowns. Giants got 15 interceptions from their defense. I said Tuffy Lehman's was their main quarterback. They had quite a few guys throw passes. They had 6, 7 guys throw passes for them. Had a lot of guys run the ball as well too. The Giants averaged 3 yards a carry. They had 10 rushing touchdowns. They only gave up 4 rushing touchdowns. Nothing super spectacular. I mean, they had better times ahead for them. That's for sure. Better times are ahead for the Giants. But the 1942 was just a very mediocre for them. They scored 155 points, gave up 139. Very mediocre. So then we go to the 1942 championship game. All right, so the Bears come in at 11-0. I mean, this is one of the all-time, I don't want to say slugfest, but I mean the 11-0 Chicago Bears faced the 10-1 Washington Redskins. Even when one loss between the two teams. If you go back to 1934 when the Bears went into the championship game 13-0, the Giants were 8-5. If it wasn't the sneaker game and ice, and that's a whole different story for another time and all that. But I mean, the Bears were the better team that day too. The frozen field, the Giants wore sneakers in the second half of the game. The Bears did not. The Giants had better traction. The Giants wound up pulling the game out by scoring 4 touchdowns in the final quarter. But I mean, if that was on an even playing field, I'm sure the Bears would have won that game because the Bears were definitely better there. But I mean, this one was a true slugfest between the two. Between the two teams, they were 21-1. True slugfest there. But the Redskins would get a measure of revenge, especially because they lost 73-0 in the 1940 championship game. So the 1942 NFL championship game was the 10th title game of the National Football League. It started in 1933. All right, the Bears won in 33. Giants won in 34. The Lions won in 35. The Packers won in 36. The Bears won in 30. The Redskins won in 37. Giants won in 38. Packers won in 39. The Bears won in 40 and 41. Now with the 42 championship game right here. It matched the undefeated Western Division champion Bears and the Eastern Division champion Washington Redskins. The Bears were co-coached by Hunk Anderson and Luke Johnson after George Halas had entered the U.S. Navy. And they were led on the field by quarterback Sid Luckman. The Redskins were led by head coach Ray Flaherty and quarterback Sammy Baugh. Chicago had won easily in the summer exhibition game with Washington, but the teams had not met during the 1942 regular season. The Bears were aiming for their 3rd consecutive league title and were favored by three touchdowns. They were on the road. This was in Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C., because the Eastern Division hosted the even-numbered year championship game. All right, so now we're at 1942. It's an even number. So the Eastern Division, meaning the Eastern Division champion, meaning the Washington Redskins, hosted it. The following season, in 1943, the Western Division would host the championship game. The Bears were favored by 3 touchdowns, but were upset 14-6 by the home underdog Redskins. Tickets were, check this out for StubHub, huh? Tickets were sold out 3 weeks in advance, and some were being resold for up to $50. Wow. I'd like to know what that is in today's money. $50 back in 1942. Wow. This was the second and final NFL game played at Griffith Stadium and in the city of Washington. The two teams met on the same site 2 years earlier. Very different results, with the Bears winning 73-0. 73-0 in a rout. Let's say, because this was the final championship game in Washington, because in 1944, the Giants hosted the championship game. 1946, the Giants hosted the championship game. And after that, the Redskins did not make another championship game until 1972. So So this was the final championship game. Yeah, actually, it was in Griffith Stadium, but because the next championship game was in 1972 at RFK Stadium, the Redskins beat the Cowboys 26-3 in the championship game. So you got from 42 to 72. So the Washington Redskins would not host another NFL champion. Well, actually, that was an NFC championship game. They would not host another championship game for 30 years at home. But it wouldn't be at Griffith Stadium anymore. There was an RFK Stadium in 1972. But obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But that's another story for another time. So, and actually, the way it worked out, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the Bears, the only touchdown that they scored, and even their extra point was no good. The only touchdown they scored was Lee Arteau. Had a 52-yard fumble return. So that means like the Redskins were in Chicago territory. I didn't watch if they had highlights or if there's a YouTube video or whatever, but the Redskins were, I guess, marching. They were in Chicago territory. They fumbled the ball. Chicago picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown, and they were up 6-0. That was the only time Chicago scored. They scored almost 400 points in the regular season. And all they could manage in this championship game was a 52-yard fumble return for a touchdown. That's all they could manage on offense. And actually, it wasn't even on offense. It was on their defense. So the Washington Redskins defense just shut them down. Wilbur Moore had a 39-yard pass from Sammy Baugh. Bob Masterson with the kick made it 7-6 at halftime. So it was anybody's game. And even in the third quarter, it was still anybody's game. You got Andy Farkas had a 1-yard run. Bob Masterson, once again with the kick, made it 14-6. So back then, 14-6, there was 2 scores. Not like it is today, where it can just be 1. But even back then, with the way the Bears could move the ball, this, that, and all that stuff and everything, the Chicago Bears, they couldn't even get a field goal offensively. The Bears had 10 first downs. They had 188 yards of total offense. They turned the ball over 4 times. They had 3 pass interceptions, and they lost 1 fumble. So I'm sure that might have been one of the reasons. But at all the points they scored on offense, all the yards they gained and everything, you were only able to get 188 yards of offense the whole game. They ran the ball 41 times for 69 yards. They averaged 1.5 yards a carry. The Washington Redskins defense was absolutely phenomenal that day. How the Washington Redskins defense was able to keep the Chicago Bears offense out of the end zone. Simply phenomenal. Simply phenomenal. I mean, as I said, the 1942 Chicago Bears. I know there was a book or two that had like they were the most dominating team in NFL history, and it's hard to argue with them. I mean, the amount of points they scored and they averaged winning by 27 points a game. I mean, that's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the 2007 Patriots didn't do that. The 72 Dolphins didn't do that. The 62 Packers didn't do that. I mean, 27 points a game that they won by. Just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But it was not meant to be. The Washington Redskins were the 1942 NFL champions. So congratulations to them. The Giants had a so-so year, 5-1, but they would rebound back in 1943. So there was still, the Giants still had some good years ahead of them. After 1946, I'm getting ahead of myself, but in 46, the Giants would go to the championship game. But from 46, they'd have a little bit of a layoff as far as going to championship games. But 43, 44, and 46 was still some very good years for the New York Football Giants. Well, that wraps up the 1942 season for the New York Giants. I'll be back once again with the 1943 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 19th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.